Greetings, Butterfly Tribe, and welcome back to The Way You See Me Heart Healing Ministry. Welcome back. Today I'm going to pick up with part 4 of Healing Childhood Trauma. And we're going to stay on the verse, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I reasoned as a child, I behaved as a child. But when I became a man, or when I became an adult, I put away childish matters. That scripture is from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, I think verse 11. Read the entire chapter of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. That is the scripture that defines what love is. And we live in a time where the word love is thrown around very carelessly. And I can say from experience that I was in my 40s when I learned what the true meaning of love was based on scripture. And I was taught that by being in the presence of the Most High. So again, read the entire chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians, and it defines love. And we know that Yahuwah, or the Most High, is love. So that scripture tells us about the characteristics of our Father. So I'm going to pick up with just a couple more memories that I have, and then I'm going to end this particular recording with the uncomfortable memories. Another memory I have is being told by my mother that when I was a baby, when I was an infant, that I lacked melanin. I was very light, and there was no connection between me being her child and her being my mother, because the color of my skin and the color of her skin, my mother is dark complected. My father is, or his family is, my complexion. And people didn't identify me with being her child. So she told me that she would sit outside with me in my baby swing as an infant, so that she can darken my skin. Now, of course, I don't remember this. I remember being told of this. And you may wonder why I'm sharing this. Because hearing that, and also along with other childhood memories where the color of my skin was used to give preconceived ideas about my personality and who I was, and I was labeled, and it caused me not to be comfortable in my own skin, always comparing myself to other people, not being comfortable with being me. Now, I know my mother loved me. And as a child, my mother was the person that poured into me. And what I mean by that is my mother always told me how smart I was. She told me I was beautiful. She spoke positive things to me. So I don't think she intentionally was trying to harm me with telling me that story. I believe it bothered her it gave her some kind of issues within herself for people to say the things that they were saying, and she wanted to share that with me. Another thing I remember is my mother would take me to the city park, and we would run around the baseball field. And this will be important because it'll play into the role of some of the decisions that I made later in life related to that. But that's how we connected and bonded, was she spent time with me. She did the best she could as my mother. I don't remember being told anything negative in my younger childhood from the mouth of my mother that caused me to feel less than, other than the things that through her experiences, her sharing them with me in relation to me and my father, making me feel like my father didn't want me. And here we go into the uncomfortable topic. Do you guys remember the song, "Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see? Oh, be careful, little ears, what you hear? Oh, be careful, little feet, where you go. For the Father up above is looking down in love. Be careful, little eyes, ears, feet." I was taught that song as a child. That song should still be taught, but it needs to be taught to the adults. The adults need to remember this when it comes to what they expose their children to. Young children, their brains are like sponges. They're very observant. We pick up on things. We have a natural curiosity as children, and we enact what we see. And so that brings me to a memory when I was between the ages of 3 and 4, when my mother caught me and a cousin, a male cousin who was the same age as me, 3 or 4, touching each other inappropriately. Now, looking back, it should have been a learning experience, but it wasn't. When I tell you she beat the bricks off of me, and I can tell you that I was never, from my memory, touched inappropriately by an adult in my childhood. But I can tell you that I had a knowledge about sexual matters from a very young childhood that a child should not have. And it came at the exposure of things that we heard and saw in our childhood, such as porn tapes, dirty magazines, inappropriate conversations that we overheard. I grew up as a young child in the 70s or 80s, so a lot of things on television it was censored. It's not like it was today. But the adults thought they were hiding things, but they were in reach of us as children, and us seeing that had a natural curiosity for it. As a child, I remember and I'm trying to make this as PG as possible, because it's uncomfortable talking about these things. But if we're going to stop the infiltration of the enemy in the lives of children, we need to let parents know how the enemy sneaks into the life of their children. And it's not directly, but indirectly brought into the home by the parent. And that exposure opens the child up for the enemy to attack. So as a child, we played games. One of the games we played in my childhood was, we would say, let's play house. And the children would pretend to either be the mother, the father, or the children. And the children would enact these roles. A lot of the time, as children, we weren't allowed to be in the direct presence when our parents and grandparents had company. So they would send all the children to one room because we were told children should be seen and not heard, or children don't need to be in the midst of adult conversations, which is true. But be very careful about leaving children, especially younger children, with unsupervised older children. So we would play house and the children would enact different roles. And from my point of view, I don't know, I know several children, or even when I'm mentoring, I hear other adults talk about this game, and it went a little bit further than it ever did in my life, but it never got to, it was just inappropriate touching, acting out curiosity, which opens a child up to be susceptible of sexual things. And that's as far as I'm gonna go with that, because my testimony is not to expose other people. I want to share the things that I went through as a child that opened me up to some very, very painful experiences later on in life. Children should not have exposure to sexual matters. When we're being taught to be careful what our eyes see and what our ears hear and where our feet go, children should be in areas where childlike activities are taking place. So in other words, when you open up, I told you previously that part of childhood is innocence. So the enemy comes to take that innocence away. And he's very cunning. So he comes in, it's not always obvious how he enters. He enters into little creases and crevices and cracks. And so part of that is we are in a spiritual war. So when you open your home up to porn or pornography, sexual inappropriate behavior and conversations, you as an adult might be able to fight off those spiritual attacks, but your children are not prepared. The enemy just exposed that child to something, opened up a doorway to access that child, to take away that child's innocence. So I'm going to leave that part, because speaking of these matters is very, very uncomfortable, because it involves children. So when I'm talking to you, I'm not talking about incest or child molestation or anything like that as it relates to me. I'm telling you that these were children in the same age group with curiosity, enacting what we saw and heard in our homes, or having access to things that our parents brought into the house that we were curious and played and saw, and now those spirits entered in. They had access to us. Part 5 will tie in everything in how a child, or how I continued to go from that into now going into school age with other children. I hope that I've said something or shared something that helped you either identify with things that you were exposed to in your childhood, or either if you're an adult watching this and not understanding that you are indirectly exposing your own children, so that you could put an end to this cycle. Join me for part 5. I pray the Most High ushers you into your own personal healing. To those who have been searching for the answers, it's by shedding light on the things that are hidden so that they don't resurface and cycle in the lives of our children and grandchildren and their children. Thank you and have a blessed and prosperous day.